What is a trauma bond? And how does someone get actually attached to someone who abuses them? And finally, what is the hormonal codes that actually begin to form inside of us when we are bonded to such a person? We're going to talk about this today in this setup, and I'm going to give you 5 different components that when you really look at them, put them together, you start to understand that, hey, the bond is really not with the other person. The bond is really with me, what I'm trying to attach to. It's something I'm actually projecting to the world, and I'm pulling that other person into my space. So trauma bonds are really something important that you need to understand in psychology for your own philosophy, for your own understanding, for your own methodology of thinking. Why? Because at the end of the day, if you don't understand this particular setup, you will be constantly pulling in people who do not mold with you, who do not are attracted to you because of the wrong reasons, and you are pulling someone in that's not good for you at the end. It's like oil and water. Trauma bonds work on us subconsciously. We don't really understand what's happening because our emotional templates for relationships are not the best. And for us to cognitively understand that and to know what we're projecting out emotionally is extremely important, because that's what's pulling in those people that might not be the best for us in terms of a relationship. So I'm going to go through 5 different principles and 5 different things that create this trauma bond. And if I'm going through these and you start to see some of these things in terms of the setup and the 5 main categories, then really check and start to seek some help afterwards. Because if you have this, it's something that you really need to work on, because it's very difficult to go towards a healthy relationship without understanding what's really happening on the inside. So let me give you the definition of a trauma bond directly. So a trauma bond is a psychological response. Psychological response. So this is inside of you as a person, where a person forms an emotional attachment. So it's a psychological response, and you form an emotional attachment to someone who is abusive or harmful. Think about that. If you form a connection, an attachment, a bond with someone who's actually not good for you, they're harmful towards you, they're actually abusive, and you go back for more. Why does this happen? Why does this happen? And I think this is something extremely important to understand in relationships. And this doesn't have to be necessarily a romantic relationship. It can be a bond with a father. It could be a bond with a mother. It could be a bond with a sister. It could be a bond with a brother. It could be a bond with a friend. It could be any kind of bond. And this is extremely important to understand, because once you begin to figure out the psychology of these things that are working on you, then you can begin to detach emotionally from these responses that will actually come from you. You are creating a gravitational pull towards yourself. When you start to pull these people in, you start to realize, this person and their behavior is not good for me. So now, this bond is powerful. Why? Because when it's followed, and this is the key, and I think I can't talk about this enough. And it's called intermittent reinforcement. And when someone does this to you, and they do it in the right way, and they know how to give you just enough attention, then they pull it away. Then they know how much to give you in terms of affection, then they pull it away. They know how much to give you in terms of just care, and then they pull it away. They know how to play the game. It's a song and dance. It's the push and it's the pull. They know when to come forward and they know when to back up. And when they begin to play this game with you, it's literally like a dance. It's rhythmic. It's a chess game. And who's gonna bow down emotionally first? It's an ego battle. And when you begin to understand that that's what's actually happening to you, and it's not truly love, this is what happens as we move forward. So I'm going to give you the 5. This cycle, by the way, just one more point. This cycle, how it happens is psychologically deep in the mind. And we don't realize it's happening till something like this happens in terms of psychology, and we begin to figure out these patterns. But what are these 5 things that you need to be aware of, or 5 categories? Number 1, I already mentioned. If the trauma bond is you are actually attracted or attached to someone who's abusive to you, and it's then reinforced by intermittent reinforcement, okay? The first one is actually that. The first principle is intermittent reinforcement. And I'm going to go through that. The second one is a survival response, and it's a form of cognitive dissonance. And the third is a hormonal reaction. What does dopamine have to do with this? What does cortisol have to do with this? And how does the body start to react without you even understanding what's happening? And then there's something that happens to us that is learned helplessness. How does that come into play? And the last is literally, it's about isolation and control, and how someone starts to take you over completely, and you don't even realize it's actually happening because they're so good at triangulation in terms of the way they set themselves up in terms of your world. They start to cut everything off. They start to cut you off from other relationships. They start to say, hey, don't do this with this person's, and they triangulate. So they cut you off from different people, your surrounding, and everything that is meaningful to you. Now, let's go into intermittent reinforcement. And I want you to concentrate here, if you're watching this, and if you truly want a healthy relationship, you have to figure this out. And what is intermittent reinforcement? Intermittent reinforcement, it's when you take the word intermittent, if you get something that is consistent, that is predictable, that is certain, you don't have to guess. But if you don't know if someone is lying to you, not lying, you don't know where the truth is and you don't know where the lie is. So you have to always assume that there's some kind of lack of truth in this person's words. So you always have to look behind their words. So you're always on the defensive. You're always trying to see what is behind this situation. What is behind their words? What is behind their actions? You can't trust fully. Your heart is on guard. So intermittent reinforcement is when someone gives you affection, but periodically. It's a pattern you cannot know. It's unpredictable. It's uncertain. It's something that you cannot figure out. So they've actually done studies on how dopamine is actually released. Okay, and dopamine is actually released prior to you receiving the reward. It spikes prior to you receiving the reward. And the way they actually did this was phenomenal. Why? Because they would have people walk up to a fridge. And in one side of the study, they would tell you what's inside the fridge, and they would measure your dopamine response. And what would happen here is something really, really incredible, because they'd see when it was predictable and you know exactly what was going to be in the fridge, and the next time it was the same food, and the next time it was the same food, what happens to the dopamine? Does it go up? Does it go down? Let's say you're hungry. The dopamine should go up because it's a reward response. But what they found out, that it actually goes down when it's predictable. You're less anxious. You can see things. I want you to think about a person who is predictable. A person who is predictable does not present chaos, does not present anxiety, does not present a up and down approach. They're predictable. There's someone who you can see their patterns, they follow principle, they may be a little boring to you because let's say you want some drama, but at the end of the day, you can see that they follow principle. But what happens when someone's unpredictable? What happens when someone is uncertain? What happens when someone is lacking this pattern of behavior? So what they did in the study, is they wouldn't tell you what's inside the fridge. And they would change the food all the time. It was unpredictable. What happened to the dopamine? It went through the roof. It spiked. Why? It's uncertain. More anxiety, more anxiousness, lack of knowing, unpredictability. It's the same thing. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but it's the gambler's response, like the slot machine. I've talked about this before. So you may be addicted to a pattern of behavior, and you begin to mistaken this pattern of behavior as love or as care, looking for the next high. Think about that. Intermittent reinforcement was studied on lab rats, and they would give a lever, and every time the rat would press the lever, it would get a reward, it would get food. And they measured the same kind of thing here. But what happened? What happened when when it would press the lever, sometimes it would get the reward, sometimes it wouldn't. The rat stayed there and kept pressing the lever over and over and over and over, and it wouldn't leave that spot. So intermittent reinforcement creates a strong bond that you have no idea is working on you. And when a person knows how to push, and they know how to pull, and they know how to play this game, trust me, the victim is you. And when you don't understand how to do this and what's happening to you, the person can pull you in, attach you to what they want, and then they'll rip your heart right out because they'll pull back. It's like getting a fish. You put the bait, when you grab on, they'll pull right back and they'll tear you up in terms of your own emotional structure. This is how it works here. So be extremely careful with this perspective. Look for it in behavior. When someone one day gives you love, care, and attention, and the next day they're talking to you like they don't know you. That is a pattern that they've also learned. And some people want a challenge, and they'll tell you, I want a challenge. I want somebody who plays hard to get. Man, you don't know what you're saying. You have no idea what you're setting yourself up for. There's something inside of you that is wrong. So be extremely careful. If you're listening to this, be extremely careful if you feel those emotions. I'm going to keep it here, but that inconsistency, okay, is extremely important. And be careful of that. Number 2, the survival response in cognitive dissonance. Now, the brain tries to make sense of this chaos. It literally starts to cling on to good times. You start to, rosy reciprocity. You start to look back and say, you know what? We had such a good time here. And this was here. And you can't remember all the bad times. Yeah, I'm going to give you an antidote for this because it's extremely important to understand. Hopefully I can remember at the end of this point, I can give you that antidote. If I don't, please remind me in terms of what we have. Now, this is important. Why? Because the good times will make you ignore the red flags. So if a person knows that you're addicted to hope, so they'll give you a little bit of affection, and in hopes that you may get it 10 times later. Intermittent reinforcement. Okay, I'll give you a hope in trial 1. Then in trial 7, I'll give you a little more hope. And in trial 15, I'll give you a little more hope there. But now you're just looking for the next what? Hope. That something is going to change and I'm going to get those good times back. I want you to really think about that pattern and what that person is doing to you. These things you need to take seriously and understand these patterns so you don't fall into them. Because at the end of the day, this triggers the fight or flight response. And why is this so important? You remember when I was talking about anxiety? You're constantly on edge. You don't know. You can't predict. It's the dopamine kick. When you understand that this is not love, it's actually survival. You're trying to just survive in a relationship, but you become attached and you begin to bond to something that is extremely harmful for you. Now, and what happens here is you get an internal conflict of cognitive dissonance where your emotions one day will tell you, man, I want to be with this person. But your mind is saying to you, oh my God, what is this? How do I get out of this? I don't even know what's happening to me. So your mind is on one side while your emotions are on the other. You're conflicted. You're not in sync. You're conflicted. And there's an internal turmoil and psychological tension. And when this happens, man, you're in for something, because this is the ride. You don't know whether to follow your cognition or your emotionality. And that is a very difficult position to be in. And that person, if they're really good and they can maneuver and they're high in emotional intelligence, they can sense you when you maneuver. So when you start to maneuver on this side, they go to this side. When you maneuver to this, they mirror you on this. They're very good at positioning themselves. That is extremely, how can I say it? I've swam, guys, through so many minds, and I've been privileged, and Allah Azza wa Jal has allowed me to do that. And I'm so grateful. But sometimes when you walk into someone's mind and you see the terror, and then you see what another person has done to them, it's so horrific, because that person is lost in their own mind. Don't allow people to do that to you. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Have enough respect. Have enough boundaries. Have enough know-how to know that you're being manipulated by other people, that they're taking advantage of you, and they may look like they mean you something so great, and they're trying to give you something so great. But that attention, the antidote, I'm going to go back. The antidote for, I'm going to leave that to the end, because there's something really important here I want to share. But there was an antidote that I wanted to share with you at this point. And it's really powerful when you begin to understand how these things work. But at the end of the day, for me, I want to give you something that, if you can do this, and I'll share it with you now. When you remember the good times, what you need to do is this. Make a list of all the bad times. And when you start to reflect in your mind and go back to the good times, pull out that list. And remember what that person has done to you. And I'm saying in situations where there actually is abuse. I'm not saying, because a lot of us, we start to play victim. Where there is truly a relationship that is abusive. That's what we're talking about here. Pull out that list and remember all the things that they've done bad, all the things that are negative, all the things that you cannot tolerate. Pull out that list, because your mind is going to go back to your addiction, to the good times, to the hope. Don't allow yourself to go back there. Also, the other side of hope is fear. Fear that person, because psychological manipulation is something that is, I'm not going to get into it, but use that as an antidote for this particular point. All right, number 3. And this here, guys, is if you truly understand the biology and the physiology of what I'm going to say, this will give you an understanding of how you can start off psychologically, and it goes into your physiology, where it's no longer underneath your control. That bond is no longer underneath your control. Because when we bond with people, it's also it's a neurochemical response. And when that happens and our chemicals take over and we become addicted, just like the gambler's high, okay? Where you're just constantly, it's the next one. It's the next one. And you keep putting in the money. It's the next one. It's the next one. I have hope. I have hope. I'm wishing for change. I know the good time's coming. That's what keeps happening. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. It's the next one that's going to get me that win. And then somebody else wins, and that gives you what? More hope. So you're addicted to that one potential situation, and you start to take crumbs that person begins to offer because they begin to devalue further. Now, hormonal chemical changes in the brain are extremely important. And the first one I already talked about, which is the dopamine spikes. This person in the beginning, they're going to give you what you want. They're going to put you on that pedestal. They're going to give you that high. And they're going to, like affection to them is like a drug that they give to you. And if you're seeking that affection, and this is something that you want, and let's say you're a little bit lonely, let's say you need something, there's like a void in your heart. Let's say you have a little bit of emotional dependency, and they see that inside of you. And they just give you a little bit of affection. Trust me, that's poison. And if they know what they're doing, and they start to give you a little more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and then they begin to reinforcement, that reinforcement of attachment. All they're doing is they're trying to give you what? They're pulling you in to attach. And once you're attached, you're done. Because attachment is intoxicating. It's chemically intoxicating. You'll ask somebody who thinks that they're in love, I can't live without this person. They're my other half. Oh my God, I need them I can't eat, I can't sleep. Now, these emotions can be an attachment that is healthy. There's positive attachment, there's negative attachment. Some attachment, will lead to love, true love. Some attachment will lead to security and reinforcing your insecurities, your voids, your dependency, your emotionality, which is a feeling of loneliness, a feeling of I need, I want. There's a void in my heart that I want to fill. And this person sees it and they put affection in your wound. And what happens? You feel special. You feel wanted. You feel care. That is the drug. So when you begin to understand this, guys, you begin to understand that dopamine is that spike. Then the second chemical is cortisol, is when they pull back. They give you the affection. Then after the affection, they cause stress and they pull back. And now you're in this, one day, I feel great. Oh my God, you're so good to me. The next day, I'm like, what? Who are you? Do I really know you? And then, what this leads to, by the way, is stress and fear. So imagine one day, this person is driving hope into you. They're driving the future. They're saying, I want to be with you. You are everything to me. The next day, they're driving stress and fear into you. Completely opposite ends of the scale. Think about that. So number one, dopamine. Number two, cortisol. Number three is very important. Why? Is because this is what happens at this level. And it's the bonding hormone, which is what? Oxytocin. And when I introduce you to intermittent reinforcement, then I create that cognitive dissonance, which is one side here, one side here. Then I begin to release the dopamine, then I release the cortisol, and then the oxytocin comes into place. And now you bond. When you bond, you're bonding through trauma. You're bonding to your abuser. You're bonding to someone who's what? Not good for you. And you go back for more every single day. Think about that. The chemical stream here and the neurobiology of what we're talking about is so real, because this is what happens inside your brain. And this can be released even during what? It's when there's confusion in the brain, oxytocin can even be released. So really think about that in terms of the next time you're trying to get close to someone. And I've said this before, guys, and I'll say it again. relationships are dangerous. Nobody walks into a relationship, okay, thinking that it's actually dangerous. You gotta understand, when you walk into a relationship, you're not gonna leave the same person. Be extremely careful when you walk into someone's presence and you get that smile and that person is just pulling you in. Be on guard. If you're trying to get to know someone, be straight out. Like, listen, if you're a guy, and I'm gonna give you some straight advice here, and if you have that kind of guts, watch what will happen. If you're a guy, okay, you wanna approach one of the sisters, one of the girls, go to her, approach her, say, hey, I'd like to get to know you. What are the means of getting to know you? She gives you her number, walk away. You know why? Because if she's willing to hide something from her father or her parents, she's gonna hide something from you. When you have that kind of control, she's gonna get that over you. And if you're a sister, protect your chastity, protect who you are. And if a guy is asking you for your number, say, you know what? There's other ways. If you really wanna get to know me, I'm a lot more precious than that. I have a lot more value and have a lot more weight. And if you want to know me, there's someone you got to put your hand in their hand first. And that's my father. If you have that kind of guts to put your hand in my dad's hand, then I know you respect me. But if you're not following these things, it's up to you at the end of the day. We all have to get to know each other one way or another. You can choose to sneak around and go around your parents. You could do that if you choose to. But you could do the same thing, but we don't want to commit because we're not ready. We need to know. That means you're not emotionally mature enough to understand that. This may seem like the social standard right now that's extreme. Trust me, it's not. It's protection. It's understanding your own value as a person. It's protecting your own heart. Because when someone walks into your heart and they attach to it and then they rip it, there's a lot of emotional bruising that you're going to carry around. And trust me, the more you do that to yourself, the more it's going to hurt. And the more insecure you're going to become. So these things, there's weight to them. Don't underestimate the way you approach someone. Don't underestimate who you involve. Don't underestimate what can happen to you after you leave the relationship. And you might be a lot more tarnished than what you think. So I'm going to leave that. That's just a piece of advice. Number 4 is learn helplessness. And over time, this may happen to you. And as this person begins to go further, they now have attached you to them. They now have released the chemicals in your brain, and now you're under the intoxication of attachment. And you feel like one day it's great, the next day it's horrible, the next day it's great, the next day it's horrible, the next day is great, the next day is horrible. And this person keeps what? Doing this to me. And I can't figure out the pattern. Now, this here, over time, if you're in this situation, the person begins to internalize this situation and believe that there's nothing that they can do. This is just how it is. There's nothing that will improve my situation. And I'm telling you, that's wrong. Learned helplessness is exactly what it is. It's learned. So when they've actually done studies in this, and what they would do, they would put a dog in a situated place where they can't jump over a wall that's in front of them or a wall that's behind them. And they would put the dog in this situation, and they would zap the dog in terms of their hind feet, just like little zaps of electricity. And for some of the dogs, they would put a button in front of their nose. And after a little while, the zaps, the button hits and the wall comes down and the dog jumps over. For some dogs, they didn't offer the button. And what happens here is really, really important that you need to understand. Learned helplessness is exactly what it is, like I said. It's learned. It's a learned behavior. And then what happens after a little while? With the dogs that had the button, they would like lower they would lower the wall halfway and then they would jump over. For the dogs that didn't have the button, when they would lower the wall, when they would zap them, they actually would not jump over. They would stand there and take the shock. Think about that. They have a means to escape, but they won't do it. That's what happens to us psychologically as well. We become psychologically imprisoned to this situation. So you got to be extremely careful with your mind, with your emotions, and who you hand them to. Understand that. This is not a joke. It's not a game. Relationships are not a game. They're not a joke. It's not something that you could just attach and detach to other people. It's not like that. You can create these bonds that are extremely harmful to your own psyche, to your own emotional state, and to your own spirituality. They can destroy you. So understand the weight and the responsibility that goes into relationships before you enter them. So, last one. Isolation and control. And now the person has taken you to that beginning stage where they're intermittent reinforcement. They give you one day, they give you affection. The next day, they give you chaos. After that, they literally take you through that cognitive dissonance. And one day they're one way, the next day they are. That's also putting you, your mind is on one side, your emotions on the other. And then your hormones begin to kick in and you begin to get the dopamine surge, you get the cortisol, then the bonding of the oxytocin happens, okay? Then you begin to a point where you're like, man, I can't do it. Well, I'm just so confused. I can't do anything about this relationship. I give up. This is what it is. It is what it is. Whatever is happening. I really don't care. The last thing they do is they isolate you and control you. And what they do is they cut you off from other relationships. From some of the best relationships you've had for a very long time, brother, sister, mother, father, they begin to isolate you. Why? Because they need that control. They need the control of your mind. Because this person has certain things inside of them that they actually also been hurt. And I'm not blaming people here. We have to know that we're all hurting in one way or another. All of us are in pain. And please, I say this to you with the humblest of hearts. Protect each other. If you're going to leave a relationship, don't put people on social media. Don't attack their character. Conceal that person. Be kind to other people so Allah Azza wa Jal will conceal your faults. Be extremely careful with other people's, the things that they don't want to be exposed. In Islam, if your reputation is on the line or your life is on the line, you're supposed to choose your reputation. Think about that. Honor in Islam is everything. Do not dishonor people. When you're going to leave a relationship, leave respectfully. Don't try to hurt the other person. Don't have an ego battle with them. Leave with respect. And when their name is brought up, talk about them kindly. We had great memories. Thank you for the memories. We didn't match properly. They have a great side. They're a beautiful person. But in this side of them, we just didn't get along. Respect their absence. Respect who they are as people. They're another human being. Just like you don't want somebody talking about you and your reputation, protect other people's reputation. We don't have to come at each other. We don't have to do that. Be kind to others. Even if they hurt you, be kind to them. Be remorseful in terms of what you've done to them as well. So protect other people's faults so Allah may protect your faults. And He may hide that. Because at the end of the day, there's no one that's going to hide. You can't hide your intentions from anyone. Why? Because at the end of the day, when we are all standing in front of Allah, your intention is going to be exposed. So imagine living this life, and I said this before, imagine you live your life with your intention scrolling on your forehead and others can see it. Live like that. Have that kind of integrity. Imagine what would happen and how scary that really is. Why? Because that exposure is not easy. We hide our emotions. We don't want people to know what we truly feel. But imagine your emotional honesty is before your tongue because you radiate that into the world. That is character. Be like that. Try to and strive to be like that. Have that kind of courage to let people know who you are. and identify. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to show your true character. Now present that through wisdom. Don't just be don't put a boulder on somebody's heart that they can only handle a feather. So with that, strive and heal if you have gone through this through tawakkul and Allah Azza wa Jal. And if you seek therapy, you can go through therapy. So tawakkul and therapy, there you go, that fits. And at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with therapy, but we all need someone to talk to. And if someone's a professional that can offer you that advice, and then when they hear you, they know how to maneuver inside your thoughts and then get to that emotion that's really making you sink. And then they can begin to help you rewire who you are and then push you forward to a better you. Those people are very special. Don't take them for granted either. Give them their due right. And especially mentors, psychologists, psychiatrists, all these kinds of fields, they've really come into their own in terms of the last maybe 10 to 15 years. But also be very careful, because at the end of the day, religion is the most powerful tool. يَا مَنْ إِسْمُهُ دَوَاء وَذِكْرُهُ شِفَاء وَطَاعَتَهُ غِنَى. So when you begin to understand the spiritual end of also what? That side and who you are, because there's a spiritual side to you. Nourish that, feed that, and watch what happens to your relationships. Rely on Him to create the security within you so you can attach properly to other people. And do that and watch what kind of people you pull and you attract into your life. So until next time, I'm hoping that this has been something that has added some information and some application to your life. If there are any questions, we can answer that and we can go from there. If there isn't, and we can go to the next. Hopefully, I'll see you guys next week. With that, I'm going to say one final thing. The most powerful thing that you can own in terms of who you are is one thing. Understand your dependency is on the inside. Your independency is from the outside. When you understand that and you begin to formulate a relationship with yourself, that you don't need anyone to fulfill your emotions. You don't need anyone to fill that void because it doesn't exist. When you are like that, this is when you are truly mature. Your heart is like an ocean of emotion, and meaning that if Allah Azza wa Jal takes a drop within that ocean, it's not going to bother you. But some of us, we get to play the victim so much that if Allah Azza wa Jal takes something from us, we feel like He's taking the whole ocean and He's leaving us with a drop. Understand, it all starts there. Your emotions are your responsibility. Don't rely on anyone to fulfill you. You need to fulfill yourself. And I'll see you guys next time.